Welcome, and we're super happy and excited to have you all here. So my name is Patricia Arboleda, and with me I have Lizette Ibarra and Jennifer Lopez. As you know, we are the Unstoppable Latinas. And so basically, we have all joined. I mean, the three of us decided to do this so that we could have conversations on different topics every month. And this month, we're going to talk about perfectionism. So welcome, and hopefully we're going to have a very interactive session as well. So please, if you do have questions, make sure that you put your questions on the chat. We're going to be looking at it and engage. So we're going to learn. The more you participate, the more we're going to learn from each other. Okay, great. So let me start by sharing, as an executive and leadership coach, working working a lot with women. One of the things that I have found is that many high achiever women, I'm going to say a high percentage of high achievers, are also perfectionists. And one of the things that I have found, or that have been demonstrated, is that perfectionism can become a stopper for career advancement. Okay, so one of the things that I would like to start the conversation is asking Lizette or Jen if you consider yourself to be a perfectionist. Who wants to start?
Lizette, you want to get started?
What should I say? I'm gonna say yes, and it's been kind of a struggle. We're gonna, dig deep into the perfectionism, theme. And yes, I've always find myself oftentimes, doing the same thing over and over and over again. Before I, do a thing for a client or I'll deliver something, I need to say it like 10 times before it goes out. And, as I dig in it, like, why do I do this? So we're gonna dig deep, but I think there's, instances in your life where you have, when it's your desire to become really, really good at what you are, then, that's a good path. But when that feeling is accompanied by fear of shame, that's a different thing. And that's what we need to look for, because I think that's the downside of perfectionism. So I think, yes, I'm gonna, plead guilty. I consider myself a perfectionist. What about you, Jenny?
I'm actually not, but it's being a journey. So when I think growing up in Puerto Rico with my family, I know that my mom was so hard on me that I could only have A's. I mean, that was the standard. I could never get a B, like, not even a B plus. It was just A. And I remember one time I got a C+ in conduct. I don't know if that was a class here in the United States or not, but it's like discipline, like conduct. And she got so mad. I think I even got some discipline or whatever because of it. I'm like, Mom, that doesn't count to the GPA. Like, why are you mad about the C? But the standard was pretty high. So when I started my career, that was my standard, right? And I think we can dig deeper, like Lily said, but I learned that trying to be perfect, I was going nowhere. And the way that I could excel was at being myself. So I really went down in the path of being my best authentic self, which means that I'm imperfectly perfect.
Yes.
That's great, Jen. And let me tell you, I am a perfectionist in recovery. So I spent many, many years being a perfectionist and suffering from perfectionism, both in my personal and professional life. But thankfully, I have also been aware of how this can have a huge impact on even time management, as Lizette was saying. I mean, you end up doing the same thing so many times in order to make sure that it is perfect because you deliver, that at the end it becomes a burden, because you end up spending more time than what you should, and that increases burnout as well. So one of the things that also happened with perfectionism is that we have the tendency to correlate our achievements with our self-worth. And so that's one of the reasons why also perfectionism has a huge impact on self-esteem and confidence. Okay, so let me then, Lizette, why don't you share a few examples on how perfectionism has helped you? Not in this case, let's talk about the positive.
Yeah, let's talk about the positive, and that's a very good point. In my case, I have started 2 companies, actually 3. And I think, being a perfectionist helped me a lot in setting the ground to run a successful business. Because if I was compliant, like, yeah, no, let's kick off and let's see what happens, I think the results, could have been different. I was over, perfectionist, and I was, like the name of the company, the logo design, like all the things that you need to get done to get a company started. That is brutal work. And I think I was super, almost obsessive with every detail of it. But I think that's the good part. And it's not about the end result to me, but it's more about the process, the hard work that you put to get there. So that to me has been the highlight of, the times that I've been, a perfectionist, the work, the hard work, that all the process that you have to go through to get there. How about you, Jennie?
That's a great example. For me, actually, it played a little bit against me. So that's a great example on how you build your business. Like, I'll go through the lens of my career, because every time somebody said, I want something to be perfect, what does that really mean, right? Like, you can ask 100 people to tell me what's the definition of being the perfect professional, and you'll get 100 different answers. So I was trying to be perfect for everybody, and when you're trying to feel that, like, you get lost, and that's what happened. Like, I wanted to be the perfect engineer and the perfect manager, but over the lens of different people. Some people have like perfect means that you have to talk perfect English, and I tried so hard on that. Obviously, it did not work, but I was okay with that. Or like, hey, you need to lead this way because that's what perfect leadership is, but that's not my natural style. So it was always like friction, and I felt like I was swimming against the current, trying to like please everybody on their definition of what perfect meant. And I say, no, let me just like focus on what's the outcome, right? And how I can best help by being again, I go back by authenticity, because I know that I'm not perfect and I'm okay with that.
That's great, Jen. And 2 points here that I would like to highlight from what you said. First of all, when you learn that you don't need to be perfect, okay, the level of stress also is reduced. I mean, you kind of like accept yourself just the way that you are, and accept the fact that you are enough just the way you are. Because what happens is that behind the perfectionism, normally, there is a set of limiting beliefs about ourselves, okay? So what we think about ourselves and our environment then are the things that trigger the perfectionism. That's one thing. The other thing is the fear of failure. Normally, when we are perfectionists, we fear failure. So for those of you who are here listening, I think a good tip is to learn to reframe failure. And we did have a talk last month about failure. Yes. And so just let me restate the importance of being able to see failure as an opportunity for growth. Because when we do that, then, and I was doing a podcast about perfectionism a while ago. And so one of the things that I was asked is this: how do you start overcoming perfectionism? By reframing failure. Once you do reframe failure, there is nothing to be afraid of. And so you're able to take more risks.
I love that.
That's one thing. And then the other thing is being able to understand that perfectionism can have an impact on your self-esteem, like I was saying before. So confusing your achievements with your self-worth is probably one of the most negative things that we can do with ourselves, because we are a lot more than our achievements or what we do. So understanding that and becoming aware of that and conscious of that is super important to be able to move forward. Okay.
I love that, Patricia. And for me, it's also really important to be self-aware of that because of the impact we can have in our kids. I
Mhm.
can see a little bit of that in my son. Like he wants to be perfect all the time, and like how to think about how I was parented, right? And trying to change that whole cycle. It's been taking a lot of conversations, intentional conversations with my husband to make sure that we're aligned and not putting that pressure on him, because I don't want him to correlate perfection with self-worth.
Exactly. That's
Yes.
very important. That's very important. And you mentioned something about being intentional. So we need to take intentional action in order to do those things. And one of the things that you were saying is very related to the growth mindset. When you don't celebrate achievement, but you celebrate the effort. Okay, great.
Love it.
So Liz, tell us, how do you think in your life perfectionism has impacted you negatively? Like,
Yeah, I think, in this race to, to really go after your professional goals, and, we always find ourselves in this trap of wanting to do everything perfect. So and what I've learned over time is that we need to, after we feel this burden that I did not do this perfectly, we need to go back and find, what is behind that. I'm going to give you an example. I remember I was doing this pitch for a company. It was, there were 6 or 7 people from an executive committee, all English speaking. I was sweating, like, I was sweating in that conversation. I prepared, and preparation is very important, I think, to mitigate, that sense of perfectionism. So that's one point. But what I want to say is, I remember from that conversation that I was talking, and I was trying to use the word methodology, because I was trying to explain, how we do things in our company. But I was so nervous that I couldn't say the word. I was like, like 2 or 3 times. And I was with one of my colleagues, and she said, methodology. And oh, thank you. So I didn't sleep for 3 nights. I swear to you, like after that conversation. And then, a few days after, I talked to her, and I told her, thank you for, doing this for me. I have difficulty saying this word. And she's like, really? I don't remember. And she wasn't fooling me. Like I could tell she didn't remember. Like, how harsh are we on ourselves? Like, we did, the pitch went super good, we got the job, but I couldn't sleep for 3 nights because I couldn't say this word to perfection. Mm-hmm. So again, I think perfection is very close related to the high standards that we set to ourselves, and how harsh our inner critic is sometimes so hard. So we need to tame down that inner critic voice. And this is part of the advice that we said that we were going to say, but I've learned to, when I go through a situation like this, and I talking to myself like, you should have done this, that, how would I talk to my best friend if it was her? Mm-hmm. So that's, a good example of the things that I've learned to do with myself. Okay, the conversation will be different. If it was my best friend, I will tell her, you did great. I mean, who cared? Nobody noticed. But with me, I was like, oh my God, how come? So anyways, that's a little bit of a learning and what has happened, in terms of perfectionism. So how about you, Jenny?
Two tips that I would like to highlight before Jenny shares her experiences. We spoke about being able to reframe failure, and Lizette talk to yourself as if you were your best friend, as if you were talking to your best friend. So, okay, take notes, because those tips are important. Now, Jen, we are looking forward to hear your experience.
Yeah, no, and I love what you're doing, Patricia. And I'm trying to also put in the chat as I get some of these like aha moments, because we're all learning from each other here. I love that. I think like making sure that you put yourself with expectations, like the right expectations. When I did a career change from manufacturing and quality to go to the business side, again, as high achiever Latinas as we are, right? I expected to like be like just hitting home runs from day one. And I realized it was a completely new world. I mean, new world, new language, new everything. It was almost after 17 years of being in M&Q, manufacturing and quality. I cut myself again, number one, and with the fear of failing and all of that imposter syndrome, all of the topics we're going to be talking this year. But one of the things is that, okay, let me be realistic with my expectations. Okay, let me prioritize what are the things that those experiences and skill sets that I can help today on day one, even if I'm not the subject matter expert, but also give myself grace, right? Grace that is going to take me a couple of months, 6 months, who knows, maybe more, to get to some understanding that I'm going to feel a little bit more comfortable, right, in this new chapter. So I think giving yourself grace is really important. And the other one that is a tip that I use for actually building my confidence muscle, it also helps with this whole perfectionism, and it's trying new things. Because this whole beginner's mindset, when you put yourself in doing something out of your comfort zone or something totally new, that doesn't have to be career related, right? It can be a new hobby or something. You start from zero and it's really humbling, but then you start celebrating the progress and the little wins. And these are the things that just, put things in perspective, right? Nobody is perfect all the time. Again, that's not the standard. It's the progress, the progress.
Yeah, celebrate the progress and celebrate the little wins. That's another important thing that we need to highlight. I mean, give yourself grace and also understand when good is good enough, because sometimes we kind of like are, and Liz, you were talking about when you started your companies, right? But one of the things that we also need to consider, and probably you've had the same experience, is that when we start a company, no matter how good the plan is, or how perfect we think it is going to be, I mean, 3 months after we start, things are going to start changing, because we start discovering new things and we start thinking, oh my gosh, I could do this as well. And we incorporate new ideas, and little by little things start evolving. So waiting to have the perfect plan is nothing but stopping you from being successful, because I mean, you will never have the perfect plan. You will always be questioning yourself. Is this enough? Is this what I need to do? But the reality is that little by little, you're going to start evolving and growing and discovering new things, right?
Yeah.
And creating new things.
Yeah. And you know what, Patty, as you were talking, I was like my first aha moment in terms of perfectionism. I was having a conversation with someone years ago, and, I was going over the same thing. And someone told me progression over perfection.
Yes.
And that just sticks with me when I find myself, with my overthinking and, rewriting, redoing, all of that, then I think progression over perfection. Boom, let's go, let's do it, And I also ask myself a lot, what is the worst thing that can happen? Like if it's not too perfect, and what is perfection anyway? No, we talked about it. Who defines perfection?
Yeah.
We define what's perfection.
Own standard, exactly.
And when you ask yourself what's the word? Well, if this is an email in English and it's a little bit, the grammar is not perfect, so what? Right? Like, progression over perfection. So those two things I ask myself a lot: progression over perfection, and what's the worst thing that can happen? If that doesn't compromise, what you're doing, the quality of your work, your whatever, just keep going, keep moving.
And Lizette, the other thing that in addition to that's beautiful, and somebody put progress over perfection, that I heard that one too, is so when I started writing my book, right? I remember I asked other people who had written books, and I got this feedback. When you go into the final editing, don't get in the trap of perfection, because you're going to start reading things and redoing them again, and then you get into this cycle and it's never going to be done. And I'm like, oh, I'm not a perfectionist, right? Like, I'm going to share. And as soon as the editing came, I'm like, oh, that doesn't look good. Oh, this can be better. I'm like, oh, Jennie, you're doing exactly what they told you not to do. So I say, is the message, coming across? Yes. Okay, go.
Yeah.
So that's very important. And then the other thing is that when you focus not on you and how people are going to think about you, but about the impact that you're going to create. And that's very important also. So I remember I was doing a keynote in New York, and I got to the event, and I looked at the stage where I was about to present. And remember, I am a perfectionist in recovery. So it doesn't mean that I don't have the little things yet happening. So I went and I got to the stage and I saw things, little things that I was like, oh my gosh, that looks awful. It's going to look awful in the video. So the first reaction was, it's not perfect. But then I said, it doesn't matter. I mean, what's important is the moment, what we're going to share, the experience, and that's it. And I completely forgot about it. If I had been the perfectionist that I was before, it would have been like a nightmare for me just thinking about that stage all the time. So I wouldn't be able to give the message that I was there to give because I would be so focused on other things. So that's how we need to also pay attention to those things. Now, let me ask you a question, because you both have managed people, right? Okay. So how do you think perfectionism can impact you as a leader?
As a leader.
Yeah.
I like your term, like in recovery, right? Because again, sometimes it kind of sticks on you because we are overachievers, like, oh, no, we don't do it. But I try not to feed on that, right? When somebody's trying to, like, one thing that I have for my lead team, I say, don't wait for like the most perfect slides. I can care less about slides, right? You can actually just talk or give me some things with bullet points that we can at least have some guidelines, but I'm not expecting for perfect anything, because some people spend hours and hours in this beautiful thing that at the end of the day, it's not about the slides. It's about the discussion and the decision we have to make. So I make sure that I don't fit into some people that may, strive for perfection. And I always tell them, hey, don't wait for things to be perfect to come to me. I want to be your coach. I want to be your sanity check. I'm here to help you grow, right? So I'm not here to judge you. I'm not here to say, oh my goodness, look at what he did. No, I'm here to help you grow and coach you from, like the sidelines. And once I put it that way, I think like people are a little bit at ease. So those are some of the things that I do as a leader.
And that is going to help you. I'm sure it helps you also to increase engagement, because when you are vulnerable and you're like that, I mean, you increase engagement. So great. Yes. How about you, Liz?
I want to go back to what you were saying, Jenny, and really be clear about the difference between striving for excellence and perfectionism, right? So, and to me, it's the way that I feel about it. And then, as a leader, I hope, I get people get it from me. Like when I feel that when I'm striving for excellence, it's more linked to my desire to be really good at what I do. And that feels energizing, invigorating. As opposite, when I'm stuck in perfection, it's linked to shame, to fear what the people are going to say. And it feels like a load. Right? So I try to do that exercise, like, does it feel heavy? Then this is perfectionism. Does this feel like, good energy, positive vibes, because I am enjoying being so good at what I do? That's striving to perfection. So, I try to, my inner voice to tell me what I'm doing. So hopefully that will reflect on the things that I've led.
That's very good. And let me just share something which is kind of related, but more than in leadership, but when you are a people manager, okay, and you are a perfectionist, okay, it can have a huge impact on you, mainly because it's very difficult for perfectionists to delegate. So you end up not delegating, you end up kind of like wanting to do everything on your own, which has a negative impact on the team, okay, and which of course will have a huge impact on yourself, time management, burnout, as we were saying before, etc. So very important to also recognize when you have, or you think of yourself as a perfectionist, and the fact that it's important not to be, so that you can also allow others to grow. Like you were saying, Jen, I mean, as leaders, our main objective is to help the people grow.
Yes.
If we don't delegate, if we don't allow them to learn new things and to grow, then we're not being the leaders that we are supposed to be.
Yeah, I love it. That's awesome. And I don't know if you guys are watching the chat, but please, if you have any questions, please let us know so we make sure that we cover those before we wrap up here. We love to hear from you as well. And I love the participation.
In fact, if you want to unmute yourself, you can do so, right?
Yeah.
Absolutely.
That's a question. Feel free to do so.
Yeah. Oh,
My-
imposter
Oh,
syndrome.
imposter syndrome.
That's coming soon, Marcia. We're going to have a whole episode on that.
Imposter syndrome. Yes, we're gonna talk about imposter syndrome soon, right?
Yes, very
Yes.
soon. That's a whole 30-minute conversation, Marcia.
Make sure you tune in.
Yes.
But since you're asking for strategies, Marsha, maybe we can share some strategies, to overcome perfectionism. And if you
Yes.
want, I'll go real quick. And we already touched on some of these, like set realistic goals, like what Jenny was saying. She was transitioning from one job to the other. Set realistic goals. Like there's so much you can do, right? So be compassionate with yourself and practice self-compassion. If you feel like you make a mistake, practice self-compassion and talk to you as if you were your best friend. And the third thing is embrace imperfectionism, because if we don't make mistakes, then there's no learning. That take imperfectionism as an opportunity for growth. So those are my 3 takeaways.
I love that. And when you're reaching for perfection, you're reaching to something that is not concrete. It just, you have to, again, go for something that is not defined by other people, but is defined by you. And I think we covered that also earlier. And when it's in your mind, and that's where it starts to getting into the imposter syndrome, remember that you are not your thoughts. Your thoughts are there to protect you. And again, we'll go that into a lot of details, but you're not your thoughts. So make sure that you externalize. I actually gave my imposter syndrome name Bruna, but we can talk about that in the next episode.
I love that. Teaser.
And the other thing, and just to close, because I think we are at the top of the hour, right? So one of the things that I always say is don't be perfect, be courageous. Be courageous and try new things, get out of the comfort zone, take risks and embrace failure. Just reframe failure, because failure is, like we have been saying, an opportunity to grow. And the other thing is, remember that your achievements are not equivalent to self-worth. You're a lot more than that. So please, please, please don't equate self-worth to success or perfection.
These
Okay.
are beautiful. That's amazing.
Yeah, I love that.
Can we end with like an inspiring word from everybody? Like just put a word on how you feel right now after learning all of this and having these distinctions. I'm going to start with courageous. I love that. That was like a mic drop moment, Patricia. So put your one word that like you feel right now. Confidence. I love it. Keep it coming. Keep it coming.
Yeah. Inspired. I love it. Energized. I feel energized.
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 It's like your.
What else?
Yes. What's your, Patricia?
Well, courageous. For me, courage is my word. Yeah.
And that's like your intent, energized. Oh, thank you. Thank you. Filling my cup. Yes, awesome.
That's
great, Marcia. Thank you.
Hey, and so before we leave, I would like to invite you all to share with your friends about these conversations that we're having. It's 30 minutes and it's a lot of fun. And come also prepared to ask questions and share the link with more women that could benefit from having or listening to these conversations.
Absolutely. Thank you so much, guys, for joining.
Thank you, guys. See you next time. Thank you for being here.
Bye.
Bye.
Thank you.
Thank you, ladies.
Your thoughts right now.